I never really thought my life would take a turn like this. My name is Mike, and I've been married to Jennifer for 5 years. Our relationship was never perfect, but it had its moments. We had a routine: dinner parties with friends, lazy weekends on the couch, and the occasional movie night. You know, the usual. But lately, I noticed little things that didn't sit right with me. Jennifer had become distant. Her laughter was less frequent, and she often seemed distracted, even during our shared moments. She started going out more, claiming it was for work or to meet friends. I brushed it off at first. After all, we both had our lives outside of each other, but the nagging feeling that something was off wouldn't leave me alone. One night she said she was going to see a movie with some friends. I didn't think much of it at the time, but when I attempted to text her, my message went unanswered. Hours passed, and I thought about how she used to send me little updates, even when she was out. I shrugged it off, convincing myself that she was having a good time. But when she finally returned home, it was after midnight, and her clothes were slightly rumpled, as if she'd been in a hurry. That's when my gut started to churn. I began to piece together the fragments of her past week. There were the late-night phone calls, the sudden need for privacy in her texts, and the more frequent trips to the gym that never seemed to end with any noticeable results. Still, I wanted to believe we were just going through a rough patch, that maybe I was overthinking things. A few days later, I was cleaning out the car and came across an old movie ticket stub wedged between the seats. It was for a film that had been out of theaters for weeks. Confused, I pocketed it, not wanting to jump to conclusions. I decided to confront her about it the next evening, hoping for an explanation that made sense. When I asked Jennifer about the ticket, her response was immediate. She laughed it off, saying she must have taken it from someone else's car during a friend's movie night. It felt ridiculous, and deep down, I knew it was another lie. The theater was closed for repairs. I had seen the sign, yet her grin didn't falter as she spun her tale. With each fabricated story, I could feel my anger building. I wanted to scream, to shake her, and demand the truth. I could see the confidence in her eyes, the way she easily dismissed my concerns. "You're being paranoid, Mike. I can't believe you'd even think that," she said, tossing her hair back. It felt like a slap. I spent the rest of that evening in a haze, my mind racing. Every memory of our relationship began to replay with a new perspective. I thought about the moments we spent together, the intimacy we shared. Was any of it real? I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, and the emotional impact of it all was suffocating. I was hurt, confused, and angry. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, the weight of betrayal settled over me. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we had built? I was spiraling into a darkness I had never known before, grappling with feelings of inadequacy and disbelief. I knew I needed to gather evidence, to find out the truth for myself. I started to confront the situation head-on. I began to follow her, discreetly watching her movements, tracking her routines, and noting the times she'd be gone for longer than she claimed. I had to know for sure if she was cheating. The emotional turmoil churned within me, but I had a plan forming in the back of my mind. I couldn't ignore the signs any longer. I needed to face this head-on. Little did I know, my quest for the truth was only the beginning of a much darker journey filled with revenge and heartache. The days turned into a blur of uncertainty, and I quickly found myself in a spiral of obsession. The evidence I sought felt like a shadow lurking just out of reach, taunting me with questions that needed answers. I started to chart Jennifer's behavior like a detective. I noted the times she left for errands and the hours she spent away from home, each instance feeding my growing paranoia. One Thursday evening, I decided to take action. The plan was simple. I would follow her after work. I told myself it was just a precaution, just to ease my mind, but deep down I knew that I was searching for evidence of betrayal. I waited for her to get ready, the sound of the shower masking my escalating heart rate. When she finally emerged, I slipped out the door, careful not to make a sound. I trailed her car into town, my anxiety mounting with every passing moment. I parked a few blocks away from the trendy bar she claimed she would be meeting friends at. Watching her through the window, I felt sick to my stomach. She walked in with her head held high, a confident strut that was both alluring and infuriating. A few minutes later I saw him, a tall guy with tousled hair and a charming grin, leaning against the bar. My heart sank as I watched her approach him. They exchanged warm greetings, their laughter mingling with the ambient noise of the bar. I felt my fists clench involuntarily as I listened to their conversation. I couldn't hear everything, but the way she leaned closer, how her eyes sparkled, it felt like a dagger in my chest. I wanted to charge in, to confront her right then and there, but I held myself back. I needed more proof before I made a scene. As the evening wore on, I observed them ordering drinks and sharing the occasional touch that sent jolts of anger through me. I felt like a fool, like I was witnessing a play that was meant for my eyes only. And then it happened. She leaned in and kissed him. It was brief, but it was enough. I felt my heart drop, falling into a pit of despair and rage. In that moment, I knew I wasn't wrong. The affair was real. I barely made it back to my car, my heart pounding as the adrenaline coursed through me. I sat in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The betrayal felt like a noose tightening around my throat. I wanted to scream, to cry, to lash out at the world for allowing this to happen. The thoughts racing through my mind were chaotic, but one thing was clear. I would confront her about this. I wouldn't let her manipulate me any longer. I returned home, my mind spinning with plans of confrontation. I waited up, pacing the living room like a caged animal. Hours passed, and when she finally walked through the door, I could barely look at her. She was smiling, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. "Hey, I had such a great time," she chirped, tossing her bag onto the couch. I could hardly contain my rage. "Did you?" I said, my voice dripping with disdain. She turned to me, her smile faltering. "What's wrong?" she asked, her brows knitting in fake concern. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "You were at the bar with him, weren't you?" I asked, my heart racing as I watched her expression change from confusion to something almost defensive. "What are you talking about?" she huffed, crossing her arms. "I was with my friends." "Don't lie to me, Jennifer. I saw you kiss him." The words erupted from me, raw and bitter. Her face turned pale, the lies I had been feeding her for so long now turned against her. The silence that followed felt deafening. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her expression shifted from shock to indignation. "How dare you follow me?" she spat out, her voice sharp. "You have no right to invade my privacy." I felt my anger flare. "You invaded our marriage, Jennifer. You're the one who betrayed me." With that, the facade crumbled. She launched into a tirade of excuses, claiming it was a drunken mistake, that it didn't mean anything. But I could see the cracks in her story, her attempts to manipulate the narrative. Every word felt like a knife, slicing through my heart and my trust. I listened, torn between disbelief and rage. It was infuriating how she tried to downplay the situation, how she insisted that it was all a misunderstanding. But I wasn't a fool. I had the truth, and I wasn't about to let her talk her way out of it. Her pleas only fueled my anger. I wanted to turn the tables, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. As I stood there, confronting the woman I thought I knew, I realized I was no longer the passive husband. I was ready for something more than just hurt. I was ready for revenge. The confrontation felt surreal. It was as if I was watching a twisted movie unfold, one where I was both the protagonist and the victim. Jennifer's pleas for understanding rang hollow in my ears. I couldn't believe the woman I loved was standing before me, skillfully weaving her way through a web of lies, desperately trying to convince me that her betrayal was somehow justifiable. "Mike, please," she said, her voice raising an octave in desperation. "You're overreacting. It was a mistake. We weren't even together that night. You were busy with work." I shook my head, my pulse racing. "Don't act like I wasn't there, Jennifer. I saw you. I watched you flirt with him, kiss him. How can you stand there and deny it?" Her face twisted in anger, the mask of innocence slipping away. "You think you're so perfect. You're not exactly the loving husband either, you know. You've been distant, too." That hit hard. It was true. I had been preoccupied with work and life, and the cracks in our marriage had started to show. But none of that justified her actions. The anger bubbling inside me shifted to disappointment, the realization that our marriage had been teetering on the edge for some time now. I'll admit I've been busy, but I thought we were working through it together. I didn't think you would choose to cheat. I yelled, my voice echoing through the empty house. Jennifer stepped back, a mix of guilt and anger flashing across her face. I didn't mean to hurt you, it just happened, she shouted, her emotions unraveling into a cacophony of tears and rage. I was lonely, Mike. Lonely, it felt like a sick joke. I had spent years building a life together, and she had chosen to betray me instead of coming to me with her feelings. The emotional impact of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I was left standing there, grappling with the fallout of her actions and my own apathy. You could have talked to me. You could have said something, I replied, my voice trembling with frustration. I didn't think you'd understand. You always seem so busy with work. She shot back, her eyes narrowing. You were never around to listen to me. The irony was infuriating. We had both contributed to the chasm between us, yet her choice to cheat had turned everything upside down. The rage I had felt earlier began to fade, giving way to sorrow and disillusionment. I can't keep doing this, Jennifer. I deserve honesty. I thought you were better than this, I said, feeling the weight of the words. Each syllable felt like a dagger piercing the fabric of our relationship. Her expression shifted from anger to something softer, almost pleading. I'm sorry, Mike. I'll do anything to make it right. Just give me another chance, she begged, her voice breaking. But I was too far gone. The betrayal had cut too deep. I don't know if I can trust you again. You've shattered what we had, I replied, the bitterness lingering in my throat. The silence hung thick in the air, suffocating and heavy. I could feel my heart breaking piece by piece. As much as I wanted to salvage our marriage, I couldn't overlook the monumental breach of trust. It felt like an insurmountable wall stood between us, built on lies, deceit, and betrayal. The emotional fallout of this confrontation was overwhelming. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief swirling within me. It was clear that I needed to figure out my next steps, but all I could see was the wreckage of our lives together. I had loved this woman, had built a future with her, but now I was left with the remnants of a life I thought I knew. After a long, painful silence, I finally spoke. I need time to think. I can't just forgive and forget like it's nothing. The words felt heavy on my tongue, but they were necessary. Jennifer nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I understand, she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm so sorry, Mike. I turned away, feeling the tears welling in my own eyes. I wasn't sure if I was crying for her or for myself. I stepped outside, needing air, needing space to breathe and think. The cool night air hit me as I walked into the darkness, my mind reeling. I felt betrayed, shattered, and lost. I had thought I would confront my wife and demand answers, but instead, I was left with more questions than ever. As I paced the yard, my thoughts turned to how I could get back at her for the hurt she had caused, how I could make her feel the same pain I was feeling. Revenge began to simmer in my mind, and the more I thought about it, the clearer my plan became. I wouldn't just let her get away with this. She had made her choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. As I paced back and forth in the cool night air, the gravity of my situation began to settle into my bones. I felt a mixture of anger and resolve, a burning need to reclaim my dignity. It wasn't enough to confront Jennifer. I needed her to feel the weight of her choices. The thought of revenge made my pulse quicken, and while it might not have been the healthiest response, it was the only way I could see to balance the scales. I spent that night tossing and turning, my mind racing with ideas. I envisioned ways to show her the consequences of her betrayal. I wasn't going to stoop to her level, but I wanted her to understand the pain she had inflicted on me. I started brainstorming. How could I make her realize the gravity of her actions? The next day, I decided to do something unexpected. I reached out to an old friend, Steve, who was a reliable source of support. We had been close in college, but life had pulled us in different directions. I needed someone to confide in, and he was the perfect person to help me hash out my feelings. He had a knack for getting straight to the point and wouldn't sugarcoat anything for me. When we met up at a local diner, I poured out the details of what had transpired. Steve listened intently, nodding as I recounted the evidence of Jennifer's infidelity and my confrontation with her. Each word felt cathartic, allowing me to release the pent-up emotions that had consumed me. "I can't believe she would do that to you, man. You deserve better," Steve said, furrowing his brow. "What do you plan to do now?" After some hesitation, I laid out my plan. "I want her to see what it's like to lose me. I'm thinking about dating someone else, just to make her realize what she's lost. I want her to feel a fraction of the pain I felt when I saw her with that guy." Steve leaned back in his chair, looking contemplative. "I get where you're coming from, but do you think that will really work? Are you sure you want to go through with it?" I nodded, resolute. "I need her to understand. She needs to know that I won't be a doormat. I want her to feel the consequences of her choices." He sighed, a hint of concern flickering in his eyes. "Just be careful, man. Emotions can cloud your judgment. If you're going to do this, make sure you're ready for the fallout." I appreciated his perspective, but it only fueled my determination. I began to formulate a plan. I would casually start going out more, rediscovering the freedom I had sacrificed in our marriage. I would make it clear to Jennifer that I was moving on, even if it was just a facade. Over the next few weeks, I started to put my plan into motion. I began hitting the bars and clubs more frequently, hanging out with friends, and even engaging in casual conversations with women. It felt empowering to reclaim my freedom, a stark contrast to the helplessness I had felt just weeks before. One night while out with Steve, I met a woman named Lisa. She was vivacious with a contagious laugh that drew me in. We started talking and the chemistry was instant. It was refreshing to be around someone who didn't have the baggage of my past, someone who appreciated me for who I was in that moment. As we exchanged numbers, I felt a mixture of exhilaration and guilt. I wasn't actively trying to hurt Jennifer, but the thought of her seeing me move on ignited a fire within me. I wanted her to see that I could be happy without her. In the following days, I made sure to maintain my appearances. I'd leave the house dressed sharply, often texting Steve to join me for drinks. Each time Jennifer asked where I was going, I would casually wave her off, claiming I was out with friends. I could see the confusion on her face. She was clearly struggling to reconcile the version of me who had always been there with this new, unchained Mike. It was the perfect setup. I made sure to share just enough information with her about my outings to let her know I was doing well, but not enough for her to feel comfortable. I could feel her probing questions, her attempts to reestablish a connection, but I stood firm. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. One night, as I returned home from another outing with Lisa, I found Jennifer waiting for me in the living room. She looked both anxious and determined, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Mike, can we talk?" she said, her voice trembling slightly. I feigned nonchalance, keeping my expression neutral. "Sure, what's up?" "I've noticed you've been going out a lot lately," she said, her green eyes searching mine. "Everything okay?" "Just living my life, Jennifer," I replied, my tone cool. "You know, enjoying some freedom." Her brow furrowed in confusion. "Freedom from what? I thought we were trying to fix things." I couldn't help the smirk that formed on my lips. "Well, you certainly made it clear that I wasn't the priority, so why should I act like everything is okay? You made your choice." Her expression shifted, frustration mingling with fear. "You're acting like a child, Mike. This isn't the solution." "Maybe not for you, but it is for me," I replied, feeling a surge of satisfaction. Watching her squirm was vindicating. The conversation spiraled into a heated exchange, emotions flaring as we both battled to assert our points. But in the back of my mind, I knew that this wasn't about fixing things. It was about making her realize the impact of her choices. I wanted her to feel the sting of regret, to see what she stood to lose. And as I stood there, confronting the woman who had shattered my trust, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. The weeks rolled on, and the game I was playing with Jennifer began to take on a life of its own. I had become a master at the facade, expertly navigating my roles as the hurt husband and the carefree bachelor. Each night out with Lisa or my friends felt like a victory, a small triumph over the betrayal that had rocked my world. But there was an underlying tension that I couldn't shake off. As much as I relished the thrill of my new life, there were moments of guilt that crept in. I'd see Jennifer sitting alone on the couch, her eyes glued to the television. and a pang of sorrow would hit me. I'd remind myself that she had chosen this path by betraying my trust, yet watching her struggle with the fallout of her actions still tugged at my heart. Even amidst the chaos, I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss, not just for us, but for the woman I had loved so deeply. One fateful night, the tension of my dual life reached a breaking point. I had gone out with Lisa again. We had a grand time filled with laughter and connection. But as I returned home, the weight of my actions hung heavily on my shoulders. I opened the door to find Jennifer sitting at the table, the dim light illuminating her tear-streaked face. "Mike," she said, her voice soft and trembling. "Can we talk, please?" I hesitated, my instincts screaming to keep up the distance, but there was something in her tone, a vulnerability I hadn't seen in weeks. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I I've been thinking a lot, she started, her hands clasped tightly together. "About us, about what I did." I leaned against the door frame, crossing my arms. "And what have you concluded?" "I know I messed up, I know I hurt you, but I really want to fix this. I miss you, Mike. I miss us," she said, her voice cracking. The sincerity in her eyes was palpable, but I couldn't let it sway me. "What do you expect me to say, Jennifer? You threw away everything we built for a fleeting moment with someone else. Trust doesn't just come back because you say you're sorry," I replied coolly, my heart racing. Her face fell, and I could see the realization sinking in. "I know I can't take it back, but I want to prove that I can change. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I don't want to lose you." The words hung in the air, heavy with desperation. In a twisted way, it felt good to see her vulnerable, to see that she was hurting and regretting her choices. But I was still grappling with my own feelings. How could I trust again? "I don't know if I can believe you," I finally said, my voice softer. "You've already broken my trust once. Why would I think you wouldn't do it again?" "Because I love you," she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. "I've realized what a huge mistake I made. I don't want to lose you, Mike. Please don't give up on us." At that moment, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to embrace her, to tell her that I loved her too and that we could work through this. But the other part, the one that was hurt and angry, held me back. I had spent the last few weeks plotting my revenge, and despite the truth in her words, I couldn't let go of the pain she had caused me. Instead, I took a step back. "You need to understand that I'm not going to just forgive and forget. I need time. I need to see real change, not just empty promises." Her expression shifted, and I could see the cracks in her facade starting to widen. "What does that mean for us?" I contemplated my response carefully. "It means I'm going to keep living my life. I'll be dating, and you need to figure out what you want." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "You're serious? You're going to date other women while I'm trying to fix things?" "I need to know that I can be happy without you, Jennifer. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine," I replied, the bitterness creeping back into my voice. The pain on her face was evident, but I felt a perverse satisfaction in knowing I was no longer the one left in the dark. I had taken control, even if it meant hurting her in the process. "I can't believe this is happening," she said, her voice low and shaky. "I never thought you would do this to me." I felt a pang of guilt, but I steeled myself against it. "You gave me no choice," I said firmly. "I'm not going to be the one who gets hurt again." With that, I turned away, leaving her sitting at the table with tears streaming down her face. I stepped outside, taking a deep breath to steady myself. I had crossed a line, and as much as it felt empowering, I couldn't help but wonder if I was losing myself in the process. Over the next few weeks, the dynamic between us shifted dramatically. I continued to go out, spending time with Lisa and enjoying the freedom of being single, while Jennifer remained at home, visibly struggling to cope with the consequences of her actions. We passed each other like strangers in the night, the silence between us growing heavier with each interaction. But as I reveled in my newfound independence, the weight of my decisions began to settle in. I found myself staring at my phone, contemplating whether I should reach out to her to see how she was holding up. I felt torn between the need for revenge and the love I still had for her. And then, one day, I received a message from her. It was simple, just a request to meet. I couldn't ignore the pull to see her again, to see if there was a glimmer of hope left in our relationship. I agreed to meet, but this time I was determined to keep my guard up. I wouldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment again. As I approached the cafe where we agreed to meet, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. What would she say? Would she have changed? And would I have the strength to resist the urge to forgive her, to let her back into my heart? As I walked into the cafe, the familiar scent of coffee and pastries enveloped me, but it did little to ease the tension coiling in my stomach. I spotted Jennifer sitting at a corner table, her hands nervously twisting around a napkin. She looked smaller than I remembered, anxiety and regret etched across her features. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of the resolve I had built over the past few weeks. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hi," she replied softly, her voice barely a whisper. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy, filled with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. "I appreciate you wanting to talk," I began, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I think we both know things can't go back to how they were, right?" She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Mike," she started, her voice steadier now. "I know I messed up and I can't take it back, but I want to prove to you that I can change. I've been going to therapy and I'm really trying to understand why I did what I did." "Therapy?" It caught me off guard. It was a step I hadn't anticipated. "That's good," I replied cautiously, "but it doesn't change the fact that you broke my trust." "I know," she said, her voice cracking. "I know I have to earn that back. I just want a chance to show you that I can be the person you thought I was. I miss you, Mike. I miss us." I felt a pang in my chest at her words. Part of me longed for the connection we had shared, the laughter, the intimacy, the dreams we had built together. But could I really believe that she had changed? Could I risk my heart again? "What if this happens again, Jennifer? What if I let you back in and you hurt me again?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with vulnerability. "I can't promise it won't happen again," she admitted, her honesty piercing through the tension. "But I can promise that I'm working on myself. This experience has opened my eyes, and I want to be better for you, for us." It was a poignant moment, one where the weight of her words settled around us like an unbreakable bond. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly eclipsed by the reality of what had happened between us. "Hope doesn't fix things," I said, my voice firmer. "You have to show me that you mean it. I can't just forget everything that's happened." "I understand," she said, her hands trembling. "I'm not asking for forgiveness right now. I just want the chance to earn it. I want to show you that I can be the wife you deserve." We shared a long, searching gaze, and in that moment I felt the walls I'd built around my heart begin to tremble. But I knew I couldn't rush back into this relationship without thinking it through. "I need time, Jennifer. Time to process everything. I can't give you an answer right now, and I'm not sure what the future holds for us." She nodded slowly, her expression shifting to one of acceptance. "I understand. I'll wait as long as it takes. I just hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me." I left the cafe with a heavy heart, the weight of my decision echoing in my mind. There was still a long road ahead, filled with uncertainty and healing. The thought of moving forward was daunting, but I realized that this was not just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life and finding a path that felt right for me. In the weeks that followed, I maintained my distance, allowing Jennifer to prove her commitment to change. She kept attending therapy, and we began to rebuild our communication, albeit slowly. I wasn't ready to dive back into our relationship fully, but I was open to the possibility of healing. As time passed, I began to see glimmers of hope. Jennifer was working hard to earn back my trust, and I found myself appreciating the small steps she took toward becoming a better person. It didn't erase the pain, but it gave me a sense of possibility, a flicker of light in the darkness that had enveloped our lives. Eventually, I learned to let go of the need for revenge, the anger that had fueled. My actions began to dissipate, replaced by a desire for understanding and growth. I realized that while the betrayal had left deep scars, it also offered us an opportunity to confront our issues head-on and grow stronger together. In the end, I discovered that healing is a journey, one that takes time and effort from both partners. It was no longer just about revenge. It was about forgiveness, rebuilding, and learning to trust again. And while I couldn't predict where our path would lead, I felt hopeful for the future, knowing that we both had the potential to emerge stronger, together or apart. This experience taught me that love isn't just about the joyful moments. It's also about navigating the storms that life throws our way. And sometimes, those storms can lead to the most profound transformations.